Let me tell you, it's not. There are so many books you can read. I'm not going to go die on a hill for this book. The movie was a lot more sensual and racy than the book. Definitely. Sex is the thing. Christians, wake up. Hi guys, my name is Mackenzie. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to Backstage. This is my second YouTube channel. I'm a singer, songwriter. I have my main channel, which is up here, if you want to check that out. But thank you for stopping by this channel. The last video I did, which I know you guys really liked, which was the video, it wasn't really a book review, but I was doing a video based off of Allie Beth Stuckey's book, You're Not Enough, and That's Okay. And so I was sharing some thoughts that were derived from that book and inspired from that book, but it was more like a coffee chat kind of deal, which is the same as what today's video is going to be. But it is, again, inspired by a book, and it's a book that everyone is talking about right now, and it's kind of getting on my nerves, but we should still talk about it, and these are good conversations to have. And the book is called Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers, and we're going to talk about the book, and not only a book, but the movie that has just come out. We're going to talk about that, and we're also going to talk about sex. Yep. It's almost Valentine's Day. We are going to talk about sex. So what a great time to do so. And we're going to be offering a Christian biblical perspective. These are things that are important and definitely need to be shared about. And we're also even going to talk a little bit about purity culture. Anyway, if you want to subscribe to my channel, that would be great. You can hit that little bell and get notified whenever I post new videos. So if you feel so led to do that, that would be great. Some of these thoughts are going to be maybe what you would expect, and maybe some of them are not going to be what you would expect. So if any of that is interesting to you, then just keep watching. So this is the book I'm talking about. If you haven't heard of it, that's kind of impressive. But this is the book. This is a very old edition copy, I believe, but this is Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. This book came out in 1991. And it's by Francine Rivers. She is a Christian fiction author. She did get her start, though, writing romance novels. So this was actually, I think, one of the very first novels that she wrote after becoming a Christian. And she was still very heavily inspired by her romance novel writing past. So there was actually a first edition of this book that actually was a lot more racy, apparently, than this version. I had this book from when I was 15 years old. I think that's when I read it. So I've had it for quite a long time, and it's coming around again and making its rounds. So I picked it up and skimmed through it just a little bit to prepare for this. And then I also watched the movie. I feel like when you talk about these things and do reviews or whatnot, I'm like, but bro, you gotta watch the movie. You gotta read the book or whatever it's about. Doesn't matter if you like it going into it or not, but you've gotta... Yeah, I think you need to read it in order to talk about it, or you need to watch it in order to talk about it. It's a little harder to read a book, but I'd already read it, so I still remember everything, but I did go back and look at try to find some parts in it that were deemed racy. If you don't know about this book is inspired by, and that's a key word, inspired by the book of Hosea in the Bible. And the story is about this girl. It's set in the Western, 1800s, gold rush period of the United States. And it's a romance story about a girl who is a prostitute, and she's sold into sex slavery, and there's a lot of stuff like that within the storyline. And this farmer man, whatever, comes into town, sees this girl, and falls head over heels in love with her, and says that he is going to marry her, and that apparently God tells him to marry her. I don't know. And so he takes her away to his farmland, and she runs away. She comes back. It's also got a little bit of prodigal son vibes in there, prodigal wife vibes in there, and then in the end they fall in love, and she finally learns to love him, and they have kids, and yada yada yada. So spoiler alert there. But is Redeeming Love bad? Is this book bad? I would tell you no, that it's not. But is it great? I would tell you that it's not. I will tell you that this is a situation where we are all going to have differing opinions on this. There's not a clear-cut answer. We're all going to have different convictions, and our pasts lead us to different convictions, like what is triggering to someone else and is convicting to someone else may not be to another person. It depends on just sort of those kind of things. Is the book bad? I would say no. Is the movie bad? Quotations around bad, because there's a lot of meaning within the word bad. Movie-wise, I would say, yeah, it's pretty bad. But I think a key point that we need to realize when we're going to talk about these things is that the book and the movie, they are two separate things. The book is much different than the movie. I'm going to put that out there. Mainly because it's a book and then there's a movie. When something is visual and then you read something, there is much that changes everything in regards to sex scenes or raciness, because you're actually showing something rather than insinuating something. You know what I mean? I did research that Francine Rivers was actually a script writer. I think she alone wrote the script. I don't know if she had any other helpers in that, but she wrote the script for the movie. And Francine Rivers also was a co-producer on the movie. So she was very heavily involved. I was wondering if maybe she had sold the rights. And in that case, you know, whoever made the movie, whatever company, like they would do whatever they wanted with the movie. And it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't have anything to reflect on her. Like that would be totally Hollywood. But she was heavily involved in producing this movie. So I would assume that what you see on camera is exactly what she wants you to see. I don't know if she compromised in any regards of that matter, but she's spoken out on social media. She's very proud of the movie. So therefore, she was heavily involved in it. So let's talk though about first the book. While this book is a retelling of Hosea in the Bible, the book of Hosea is nothing remotely similar to this in the principle of what the book of Hosea means in scripture. But when it says that something is inspired by something, or that this is a retelling of something else, you can't take that to mean that they are literally going to be paraphrasing the exact principles and storylines and themes of whatever that thing is based off of. In this case, it's Hosea in the Bible. You can't get mad that this doesn't equate to Hosea, because it's not a word by word. It's not a account by account. Like, that's not how this was supposed to be written. But I definitely think it's super important, and it kind of gets a little sketch when you're treading on those waters dealing with scripture. Like, it's different if this book was based off of Romeo and Juliet and it was a retelling of that, or yada yada yada, or another fiction work. But when you're dealing with scripture, when you're dealing with the Holy Bible, it comes with a lot of weight, and people are never going to like what you do with it. They are never going to like how you retold Hosea, how you retold David, how you retold the story of Jesus and his birth or his crucifixion, or heck, how you retell, I don't know, Esther, Ruth, another book in the Bible. No one is going to like what you do with it. Everyone's going to have differing opinions, just because it's the Bible, and people have very high standards, which is good. But even though that the book is not supposed to be an accurate portrayal of the book of Hosea, I still think it needs to be treated with the utmost caution, and especially since it has been such widely distributed to young teen girls and young women. Because sadly, no one has the motivation or drive to go read the book of Hosea for themselves. So a lot of people will think of this as like, oh, this is what the book of Hosea is about. It's about love. It's about everything working out in the end. It's about this. It's about marrying a prostitute. And let's talk about what the book of Hosea is about. Elisa Childers actually did a wonderful 10-minute video about this book, and I agreed with everything basically that she said. And she mentioned that Christians, I think, are missing the point about this, which I would agree, and this is why. Is because the book of Hosea is not about any of those things. The book of Hosea is about judgment, and it's a representation of God with Israel and how Israel fell away time after time after time again, but God still chooses them and how he delivered them out of Egypt, and then they still choose to go after different gods time and time and time again, centuries upon centuries later. And it's a representation through that principle of Hosea being told by God to take a wife who was immoral. She then, after they were married, she then left him, went back to him, some of that going on. And we don't actually know if she was a prostitute or not. She could have been. She was, all that we know is that she was not wholesome. Their children were given names of judgment by God for them to name them. So the book of Hosea is not about this lovey-dovey romance thing at all. So in my humble opinion, it's treading on thin water to be taking a story that is supposed to point back to Jesus, point to judgment, and showcase the effects of sin and how that distances us from God. And it just kind of cheapens that. Like the story of Hosea, it kind of cheapens it when you read this. I mean, it just simply does. That's just the cause and effect of that. But let's ask another question. Is romance as a genre, is Christian romance, Christian fiction, is it wrong at all as a genre? Is Christian romance bad? That's another one that is up to each person. Kind of, I mean, we definitely don't need to be reading 50 Shades of Grey, of course, but I said Christian romance. If it's putting bad images in your head and you can't control your thoughts and it's leading you down a path that's, not right, and if you feel convicted by the Holy Spirit, then you don't need to read it. Like, you don't need to read it. But I also think that, do teen girls need to be reading this book? Absolutely not. I don't think you need to read the book unless you're like engaged or like, married. But it also depends on you. Like, if you're able to like keep a clear head and like just charge ahead and you just love the storyline and like, people are different. Everyone's sex drive is different. Like, that literally has something to do with it. But let's just talk about some of the raciness in this book. So I've read this book and I actually went back and looked for the sex scenes in the book. Most of the sex scenes, if not all of them, I couldn't find one. It was kind of hard. There's like, there's like over 400 pages in this book. So it's kind of hard to make sure I found all of them. But there was nothing written, and I never remembered anything being written in this book, reading it when I was 15. I never remember a scene of intimacy in this book being extremely racy or even being deemable as racy. Now, think of what this book is about. This book is about prostitution. It has sex slavery in it. There is abuse. There is, that's about it. There's rape. There is cheating, lying, all of that and the above. That's about all I can think of. But think of the subject matter. What do you expect the book to be about? That stuff does happen. Sex slavery is very, sex trafficking, that is a very modern day issue. So this stuff does happen. I don't think it's wrong to write about it. I absolutely do not. That stuff does happen. We need stories of deliverance like that. Like, whether it's this one or another one. Like, these are not bad things to write about. What do you expect? You can't say it's racy just because it deals with a subject matter that is for a mature audience. If you're going to get hung up on that, then don't even bother watching this video, because that's not the point here. The point is, how are those matters dealt with in a delicate manner? What is the tone of the story? Is it written in a racy way? What is the overall motive of the story? Is it to glorify those things, or is it a representation of how how someone was once lost but now is found. I would definitely tell you it's the latter. Like, this is not a book that I would think is shameful for you to read. I just wouldn't. When the sex scenes come up, it's more so insinuated. There is dialogue. There is, I actually bookmarked one of them. I'm just going to flat out read it to you. So this is a part in the story. This is when they first consummate their marriage. I just want to read a few lines just because I think it's important to see how this is insinuated rather than giving a graphic play-by-play of what happens. So she says, Michael, he cupped her face. Look at me. Say it again. Michael. Was he satisfied now? She waited for his triumphant grin and instead saw his adoring eyes and heard his tender voice. Keep on saying it. ... When it was over, Michael held her close, telling her how much he loved her and of the pleasure he found in her. He was no longer hesitant, no longer the least unsure, and with his growing assurance, her own doubts expanded. Some unknown and unwelcome emotion opened deep inside Angel. That's the woman's voice. Something hard and tight began to soften and uncurl. So that is the first time that they consummated their marriage. In the storyline, Hosea, Michael, whatever his name is, he wants to wait until that actually means something to her because she, comes from prostitution. So sex is just a job for her, not a actual displaying of love. So that's the context there. Obviously, that was insinuated. There was nothing graphic. If writing about sex is wrong, then why do we have the freaking Song of Solomon in the Bible? Like, shall we just read from the Song of Solomon? Let's just uncover what is written in the Song of Solomon, if you've never read it. Song of Solomon 2, verse 3. As an apple tree among the trees of the forest, so is my beloved among the young men. With great delight I sat in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. That, my friends, is about oral sex. Song of Solomon is written in a very poetic way, but it doesn't take much to pick up on the hints here. Solomon addresses his bride in chapter 4, verse 5. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle that graze among the lilies. There's talk of breasts. Your neck's like a goat. Somewhere in here, terms of endearment were different back then. Chapter 5, verse 1. I came to my garden, my sister, my bride. I gathered my myrrh with my spice. I ate my honeycomb with my honey. I drank my wine with my milk. Eat, friends, drink, and be drunk with love. Beat that. If writing about sex is wrong, we have a whole book about intimacy and marriage done in the most beautiful, exquisite, poised, classy way. Maybe poised and classy aren't the best words to use about God's literature, but you get my point. They are not racy. It is not wrong to talk about sex. It is not wrong to enjoy your husband or your wife in the context of marriage. It is not wrong. Sex is the thing. Christians, wake up. Stop being so weird talking about sex. It's crazy. We are all here because of sex. We are all of our ancestors, everyone's here because of sex, okay? Adam and Eve, it's been around since them. Get over it. Stop being weird about it. Stop being so shameful about it. Now that brings me to another topic. We're going to get into some purity culture because I think that ties in a lot to this book and the issues surrounding this book. If we're afraid to talk about sex as Christians and afraid to talk about it to our children at all, guess what? Culture's going to talk to them about it, and they're going to have a lot more to say about it than you. So better they hear it from your mouth first. I remember youth group sermons about sex and how awfully they talked about it. No one knows how to talk about sex. It's quite ridiculous. It's a very, everyone does it. Saved, not saved, everyone's doing it. I don't know why we're so backwards talking about sex as Christians. We are the ones who should be talking about it first and foremost in the proper context, because that is how we display to the world and to others what what marriage is supposed to be, and showing the beauty of waiting for marriage. So showing the beauty of what you get to experience with your spouse in marriage. It is a God-given gift. It is not shameful to talk about. There should be no shame associated with talking about sex. Now, is sex before marriage wrong? Yes. God does not say go out and have sex before marriage. He says that we should wait, and we need to honor him in that, because there's so much goodness that comes from waiting. So that message is not wrong about purity culture. There is a sect of progressive Christianity that has fallen away from Christianity. It is not progressive Christianity. It is not true Christianity. It just simply isn't. And this is one of the things that really just damaged them so much, was the fact that, oh, it's not wrong. Sex is not wrong. I shouldn't be ashamed of my body. Well, they do have a point. We shouldn't be ashamed of our bodies. We shouldn't be ashamed of sex. Sadly, that was a negative aspect of purity culture, which just simply taught sex is bad, love God more. That was all that purity culture really had to offer. Put a ring on your finger, save yourself for marriage, write a letter to your future husband, and if you have sex before marriage, you are damaged goods and you suck and God doesn't love you anymore. That was the toxicness of purity culture. But what that essentially promoted in Christianity, and I think that we're seeing the effects of that today, as well as with the context surrounding this book and movie, is Christians are still fuddy-duddies about sex. They just are. And I am not telling you that this book is amazing and is just such an accurate portrayal of God and the scriptures and blah, blah. Let me tell you, it's not. There are so many books you can read. I'm not going to go die on a hill for this book. This book is not all that in a bag of chips. I think Francine Rivers is an amazing author. I think she's an amazing writer. I do think it's a pretty good book. But there's so many other books if you want to read a book, go find another one if you don't feel comfortable reading it. You don't have to. I think that people do have some points that need to be taken in consideration regarding this book. There are definitely things that need to be addressed, and you need to be in the right frame of mind and the right maturity level in order to read it. And if you're not, I would say stay away from it. But in the regards of how racy it is and how it talks about sex, blah, 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 get over it. Sex is a prevalent thing. And if we can't talk about it in the right context, then that's kind of scary, because someone else is going to, in a negative context. And then we're still going to be right in the back in the same boat where we have Christians just going out and playing house. We can't have that. And we need people to be talking about sex in a proper, respectful, God-honoring way. Let's get into more about the movie. I watched it just so I could talk about it. So mostly Christians are talking about these couple sex scenes in the book, or in the movie, excuse me, that are pretty racy and graphic. So since I watched the movie, I saw them. First thing, I don't think sex scenes should be anywhere near a Christian movie. The very fact that we are displaying sex in any motion picture, I don't care if it's Redeeming Love, I don't care if it's a Christian movie, I don't care if it's Godzilla, I don't care if it's Avatar or Marvel, whatever movie. Do you think God approves of sex scenes at all in movies? But yet we got people over here watching Game of Thrones, we got people just watching like random movies that all have pretty much sex scenes in them from time to time, whether they're quick or 2 minutes long or 50. We got people watching 50 Shades of Grey. Like, why are we singling out this movie? We all watch movies with sex scenes in them. In the context of Hollywood movies in general, these two sex scenes, they were not that bad. Like, in the context of all the other movies. Now, should they have been in there? No, I don't think they should have, especially since this is about this is supposed to be a Christian story based on this book, which has the genre Christian fiction. So no, they shouldn't have put sex scenes in a Christian movie. What are you doing? Like, of course that's going to be all people are going to be able to talk about anyway. It's PG-13, it's not R, but still, like, it showed too much. It's not necessary. It's just like, why? You had one job. to do a Christian romance movie. You ruined it. You showed sex. Not by just talking about sex. That's not what I mean. But there is ways that you can insinuate sex. You don't have to show that. And the fact that they did, it screams like that's a cop-out to me. Like, you just did what everyone was afraid of. You showed too much. You went too far. Am I going to tell you, don't go watch this movie. This movie's so bad. It's not God-honoring at all. Meh, 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 meh. If you want to go watch it, watch it. Overall, after watching it, I would say the movie was a lot more sensual and racy than the book. Definitely. Because, I mean, it has really no choice but to be, because it's visual. I mean, we are such visual creatures as humans. And of course, words can be extremely visual and put pictures in your head that you don't want. But I did notice in the movie that they really kind of went out of their way at times to be extra racy, just with what they chose to show and what they chose to say and portray. And let me just tell you that the movie, quality-wise, I'm not talking morally, I'm talking like quality, the movie sucks. Like, the movie is terrible. Like, this is no movie that you are going to miss out by not seeing. Romance as a genre in movies right now is so... It's so corny because no one knows how to do it anymore, and no one knows how to accurately write a script for it or direct it, and they all come out super cheesy and lame. And I watched the movie and then I looked up who was the screenwriter, and it was Francine Rivers, and it definitely shows. Not that she's not a great author, but the movie, it's like, writing a script is so much different than writing a book. Certain people in their mind, we all have different paths, and let's be honest, girls can struggle with pornography too. So if these things are triggering to you, and you need to really watch your sanctification in this, and really watch your mind, what you put into your mind, and what you allow yourself to watch and partake in, please do not watch this. Like I said, it's not a hill that I'm willing to die on. If you don't agree with reading it or partaking in it at all, the book or the movie, I think that's a valid argument. Like, please do not. I just think there's lots of other books to read. There's lots of other movies. The movie, quality-wise, was not good. Do not recommend it. It has a 10% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, it's not good. That's my thoughts on Redeeming Love. Thank you guys so much again for watching. If you like this, I can do more videos like this. Just let me know in a comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.